Dad, perfect events. At the airport, my daughter's husband said, "You're flying economy and we're flying business class. I don't want you sitting with us." I nodded. He didn't know that I paid for the tickets. During the flight, I called the bank. "My name is Charles Anderson, and I'm 58 years old. This is my story. I used to believe that family was everything. For 35 years as a civil engineer, I'd built bridges and infrastructure across the Pacific Northwest. The Tacoma Narrows Replacement Project, the I-405 expansion through Bellevue, the Sound Transit light rail extensions. My fingerprints were on half the structures that kept Seattle moving. My late wife Linda and I worked ourselves to the bone, saving every penny, investing wisely, building something substantial to pass down to our daughter Rebecca. When Linda died 3 years ago from breast cancer, leaving me alone in our paid-off house in Ballard with a comfortable retirement fund of nearly $750,000, I thought Rebecca and her family would be my anchor. How wrong I was. The signs started small. At first, it was just occasional requests from my son-in-law, Timothy Parker. "Charles, could you help with the down payment on our new Escalade? The dealership needs it by Friday." Then it was private school tuition for my grandchildren, Amanda and Benjamin. "It's Whitman Academy, Charles, the best prep school in Hartford. Don't you want the best for your grandkids?" Of course I did. What grandfather wouldn't? So I transferred the money. $15,000 here, $25,000 there. Timothy always promised to pay me back when his next big commission came through. He worked as a portfolio manager at some investment firm in downtown Hartford. Made good money, or so I thought. Surely they could afford these things themselves. But the commission never seemed to materialize, and the requests kept coming. The roof needed emergency repairs, $22,000. Amanda needed orthodontics, another $15,000. Benjamin made some elite travel soccer team, $8,500 for equipment and fees. The kitchen was falling apart. Could I help with $35,000 for a complete remodel? Still, I told myself I was being useful, needed. Linda had always said Rebecca was our greatest accomplishment. I wasn't about to fail her now. When Rebecca called in late November, inviting me to spend Christmas with them in Hartford, I was overjoyed. I hadn't seen my grandchildren since Easter. I immediately went online and booked my usual economy seat, Alaska Airlines, nonstop Seattle to Hartford. I'd never been one for frivolous spending, even with my comfortable retirement. That's when Timothy called back 2 hours later. "Actually, Charles, change of plans. I booked us a chalet in Aspen for the holidays. Company perk. You should definitely come. The kids are so excited. I'll text you the flight details." The text arrived within minutes. December 23rd, Seattle to Aspen, United Airlines. When I looked up the ticket price, my hands actually trembled. $1,847 for economy class. But this was Christmas with my family, my grandchildren. I hadn't seen them in 8 months. I clicked purchase without hesitation. 2 weeks later, I stood in SeaTac Airport, pulling my modest black carry-on toward gate A7, scanning the crowd for Rebecca's familiar face. The terminal was chaos. Families rushing with oversized luggage, delayed flight announcements echoing overhead, coffee shop lines snaking into the concourse. I spotted Rebecca near the premium check-in counter, designer luggage at her feet, perfectly styled blonde hair, that expensive wool coat I had helped pay for last winter. Timothy stood beside her, scrolling through his iPhone, wearing a suit that probably cost more than most people's car payment. Amanda and Benjamin sat on their matching Toomey suitcases, completely absorbed in their iPads. "Rebecca!" I called out, waving. She turned, and for a split second, I saw something flicker across her face. Not quite disappointment, but close. She whispered something to Timothy, then walked over. "Dad, you made it." "Of course I made it. I'm so excited for—" "Listen," she interrupted, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "There's been a situation with the seating. Timothy's company only comped 3 business class tickets. We tried to get you upgraded, but—" She shrugged, as if the universe itself had conspired against me. My stomach dropped like an elevator with cut cables. "Oh, that's okay, honey. Economy is fine. I just want to spend Christmas with you all." Rebecca glanced back at Timothy, who was now watching us with an expression I couldn't quite read. Cold, calculating. She stepped closer, her voice even quieter. "The thing is, Dad, You're flying economy and we're in business class. Timothy says it would be awkward. You understand, right? The terminal noise seemed to fade to white static. Did I understand? I stared at my daughter, my only child, the baby I'd rocked to sleep during those endless colicky nights, the little girl I'd taught to ride a bike in our Ballard driveway, the young woman whose college tuition I'd gladly paid, whose wedding reception I'd helped fund. And I didn't recognize her. Timothy doesn't want me sitting with you, I repeated slowly, making sure I'd heard correctly. It's not personal, Dad. It's just that business class is really small and intimate. We want to relax as a family, you know? You get it. I nodded because what else could I do? Make a scene in the middle of SeaTac Airport? She actually patted my shoulder, patted it like I was some elderly stranger who'd gotten confused about his gait, and walked back to her family. I stood there frozen, watching her lean down to kiss Benjamin's forehead, watching her laugh at something Timothy said to Amanda. What Timothy didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had paid for all 4 of their business class tickets. Round trip, Seattle to Aspen. $18,947 charged to my Visa just 5 days ago. 5 days ago, when Rebecca had called saying, "Dad, Timothy's company thing fell through at the last minute. Could you possibly help us out? We'll pay you back in January, I promise." The kids have been looking forward to this trip for months. As I walked toward gate C14, economy passengers far from their premium gate, I felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. Not quite anger yet. Something more like clarity. Once we were airborne, I did something I'd never done before. From seat 32B, squeezed between a coughing businessman and a teenager with noise-canceling headphones, I pulled out my phone and called my bank. "First National Bank, this is Angela speaking. How may I help you today?" I pressed the phone closer to my ear, trying to hear over the engine noise. "Yes, hello. This is Charles Anderson. I need to review my account transactions for the past 18 months. "Certainly, Mr. Anderson. For security purposes, can you verify your date of birth and the last 4 digits of your social security number?" My hands shook slightly as I provided the information. What was I doing? This was my daughter, my family. But that cold clarity from the terminal hadn't left me. If anything, sitting in this cramped economy seat, while my family relaxed in business class, had crystallized it into something sharper. "Thank you, sir. I'm pulling up your accounts now. What specifically are you looking for?" "All transfers over $5,000. Can you email me a detailed statement?" "Of course. Give me just a moment." While Angela typed, I stared at the seat back in front of me. When had it started? Really started? Not the requests for money. Those had always existed in small amounts. Birthday gifts, Christmas bonuses, help with Rebecca's car payment when she was fresh out of college. But when had I become someone my own son-in-law was ashamed to sit next to? "Mr. Anderson, I'm showing quite a few large transfers. The statement will be comprehensive. Is your email still charles.anderson1965@gmail.com? "Yes, that's correct." Sent. "Is there anything else I can help you with today?" I hesitated. "Yes, I need information about establishing a revocable living trust." There was a pause. "I can transfer you to our estate planning department, but they're closed until Monday. Would you like me to schedule a call back?" "Please, first thing Monday morning." That night in the cramped bedroom of the Aspen Chalet, naturally the smallest room, while Timothy and Rebecca took the master suite with the mountain view, I opened my laptop. The Wi-Fi was spotty, typical for these mountain rentals, but eventually the bank statement loaded. My breath caught. $187,450. In 18 months, I had transferred $187,450 to Timothy and Rebecca's joint account. I scrolled through the list, each transaction bringing back a memory. $22,000. "Charles, we need emergency roof repairs. The inspector says it could collapse." $15,000. "Amanda needs braces and Invisalign. The orthodontist wants payment up front for the family discount." $8,500. "Benjamin made the premier travel soccer team. Equipment, fees, and travel expenses are due by Friday." $35,000. "We're finally redoing that horrible kitchen. You'll love it when you visit. It'll be like something out of those home shows Linda used to watch." And the most recent one, $18,947 for these very plane tickets. Business class, round trip, for a family trip I was now excluded from. I opened a new browser tab and pulled up Timothy's LinkedIn profile. There was a post from just 2 weeks ago. Grateful to close out Q4 ahead of targets. Sometimes hard work and persistence pay off in ways you never expected. Hashtag blessed, hashtag financial advisor, hashtag goals. 47 people had congratulated him in the comments. I kept scrolling through his feed. Photos from various company events. Timothy shaking hands with some executive. Timothy at what looked like a high-end conference in Miami. Timothy receiving some sort of sales award. This was not a man struggling to make ends meet. I switched to Rebecca's Facebook page. She rarely posted, but when she did, it was revealing. 2 months ago, a photo of their newly remodeled kitchen, the one I'd paid $35,000 to renovate. It looked like something from Architectural Digest. Wolf range, marble countertops that probably cost more than most people's annual salary. Custom cabinetry that stretched to the cathedral ceiling. The caption read, "Finally have my dream kitchen, so blessed." 23 likes, including one from Timothy's mother, with 3 heart eye emojis. I scrolled further back. A photo from last summer. The whole family standing in front of a brand new black Escalade. Finally upgraded our family ride. The kids loved the DVD system for long trips. That would be the Escalade I'd helped fund with a $15,000 emergency down payment, because their financing fell through at the last minute. They weren't struggling, they were thriving. On my money, I closed the laptop and sat in the darkness, listening to the muffled sounds of my family playing some board game downstairs. Loud laughter, competitive banter, the kinds of sounds that should warm a grandfather's heart. But no one had knocked on my door to invite me. No one had even mentioned that I might want to join them. The fear came then, not of losing my money, that was already gone, but of what came next. If I confronted Timothy, would I lose Rebecca entirely? Would I ever see Amanda and Benjamin again? They barely knew me as it was, seeing me maybe 3 times a year when it was convenient for their parents. But then I thought of that moment in the airport, Timothy's dismissive tone. It would be awkward. The way Rebecca had patted my shoulder, like I was some doddering old man who needed to be managed. Something hardened in my chest, the same feeling I'd had 30 years ago when a construction foreman tried to bully me into cutting corners on the Evergreen Point Bridge expansion. Some things you don't compromise on. Your integrity, your self-respect. The standards you've lived by for 6 decades. I opened my laptop again and created a new document. Financial transfers, Timothy Parker. I began listing every transaction, every promise to pay you back soon, every emergency that had turned out to be a luxury, every crisis that had somehow coincided with their desire for a lifestyle upgrade. By 2 a.m., I had a complete record. Bank transfers, dates, amounts, and Timothy's exact words from each request. I also had the beginning of a plan. First thing Monday morning, I would call the estate attorney my bank would recommend. I would establish a trust, one that Timothy couldn't touch, couldn't manipulate, couldn't even see. Then I would secure what remained of my assets. The house in Ballard, my Boeing retirement account, my investment portfolio, everything Linda and I had built over 3 decades of careful planning. But that wouldn't be enough. This wasn't about the money anymore. It was about respect. It was about teaching my daughter, and yes, my grandchildren, that you don't treat people like ATMs, especially not your own father. I would need documentation, evidence, not just for myself, but for whatever legal proceedings might come. Because if I knew Timothy at all, and I was starting to realize I knew him better than I'd wanted to admit, he wouldn't take the loss of his personal bank account lying down. I pulled up my email and started a new folder, Timothy Records. Every email where he'd asked for money, every text message, every voicemail promising repayment, every casual mention of financial stress that had somehow required my intervention. I would save it all. As dawn broke over the Aspen Mountains, casting long shadows across the snow-covered peaks that Linda would have loved to see, I heard footsteps in the hallway. A soft knock at my door. "Grandpa?" It was Benjamin's voice, small and tentative. "Are you awake? Mom says breakfast is ready." I took a deep breath, saved my work, and opened the door. My grandson stood there in his pajamas, looking up at me with Linda's blue eyes. "I'll be right down, buddy." He grinned and ran off toward the stairs. I could do this. I would do this. But first, I had to get through the rest of Christmas. The Monday after Christmas, I sat in the offices of Walsh and Associates, estate planning attorneys, facing a sharp woman named Catherine Walsh, who couldn't have been much older than Rebecca. But unlike my daughter, Catherine looked at me with genuine professional attention. "Mr. Anderson, you mentioned on the phone that you want to restructure your estate plan. Can you walk me through your current situation?" I slid the folder across her mahogany desk. 37 pages of bank statements, highlighted transfers, and a detailed timeline I'd constructed during those sleepless nights. In Aspen, the numbers told a story I was still coming to terms with. "I need to protect my assets from my son-in-law." Catherine's eyebrows rose slightly, but her expression remained professionally neutral. She opened the folder and began reading. I watched her face as she processed the numbers, the patterns, the sheer volume of money that had flowed from my retirement accounts to their lifestyle fund. After 5 minutes that felt like an hour, she looked up. "Mr. Anderson, I need to ask you something directly. Did your son-in-law coerce these transfers? Were you threatened or manipulated?" "No," I said quietly. "He asked, I gave, every single time, and he promised repayment every single time, with my daughter backing him up." Catherine nodded slowly. "How much of this has been repaid?" "Zero, not $1. She closed the folder. "All right, here's what we're going to do. First, we establish a revocable living trust. All your assets, your home, your investment accounts, your Boeing pension, everything, transfer into the trust. You maintain complete control as trustee, but the assets are protected from creditors and opportunistic family members. How long will this take? The trust can be established within 2 weeks. But, Mr. Anderson," Catherine leaned forward, "once you do this, your son-in-law will likely find out. If he's monitoring your accounts, if he's named on anything, there will be notifications. Are you prepared for that confrontation?" I thought of Christmas morning, Timothy handing me a $15 bottle of wine from Costco while showing off the new Rolex that Rebecca had surprised him with. Rebecca presenting me with a generic gift card while wearing the diamond earrings I'd indirectly funded through their kitchen remodel budget. I'm prepared. The paperwork was filed on January 4th. By January 6th, my phone rang at 7:30 in the morning. "Charles, what the hell is going on?" Timothy's voice was sharp, aggressive, lacking any pretense of the respectful son-in-law persona he usually maintained. I was in my kitchen making coffee in the Ballard house Linda and I had bought 32 years ago, and I carefully set down my mug before answering. "Hello, Timothy. How are you?" "How am I?" "I'm confused, Charles. I tried to access the joint savings account Rebecca set up to help you manage your finances, and it's gone. Closed. The bank says all your accounts have been restructured. What's happening? Are you sick? Is this dementia?" There it was. The gaslighting had begun right on schedule, exactly as Catherine had predicted. "I'm perfectly healthy, Timothy. I've simply reorganized my finances." "Without telling us?" "Charles, I'm your son-in-law. We're supposed to help you with these things. You're 58 years old. You shouldn't be making major financial decisions without family input." "Family input?" I repeated softly. "Is that what you call it? What's that supposed to mean?" I took a deep breath, remembering Catherine's advice to document everything. I was already recording the call on my phone. "Timothy, in the past 18 months, I've transferred over $187,000 to your accounts. You've repaid exactly zero. You promised every time that you'd pay me back. Were those lies?" Silence stretched across the line. Then, "Charles, that wasn't loans. That was family helping family. You know we've been struggling. Rebecca lost her job. The economy is terrible, and the kids' expenses keep growing. You just posted on LinkedIn about exceeding your sales targets. Congratulations, by the way." Another silence, longer this time. When Timothy spoke again, his voice had changed, colder. "You're monitoring our social media now? Jesus, Charles, this is paranoid behavior. I think you need to see a doctor." "I'm protecting myself, Timothy. There's a difference." "Protecting yourself from what? From your own family? We love you. Everything we've asked for has been for legitimate reasons. If you're going to be paranoid and selfish." Selfish? The word triggered something deep. "I paid $18,947 for your family's business class tickets to Aspen. You told me not to sit with you because it would be awkward. Does that sound like love to you, Timothy?" The silence stretched so long, I thought he'd hung up. When he finally spoke, his voice had shifted again. Calculating, strategic. "I think you need professional help, Charles. This paranoid thinking, these wild accusations, it's not normal for someone your age. Maybe early-stage Alzheimer's. Rebecca and I have been researching it. We should get you evaluated." My hand tightened on the phone. "I'm not sick. We're concerned. We're going to come visit this weekend. We need to talk about this as a family, get you the help you need." "I don't think that's a good idea right now. Charles." His voice shifted one more time, softer now, almost pleading, but I could hear the steel underneath. "Don't do this. Don't push us away. We're all you. Have left. Don't you want to see your grandchildren?" And there it was, the threat wrapped in false concern, the weaponization of Amanda and Benjamin. "I need to go, Timothy." I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from vindication. He'd shown his true colors, confirmed everything Catherine had warned me about. She called me 20 minutes later, as if she'd been waiting by the phone. "Mr. Anderson, I need you to document everything from that call. Write down what was said, the exact time, the threats made. If this escalates, we want a paper trail." "Escalates to what?" "Your son-in-law mentioned having you declared incompetent. It's a common tactic in these situations. If they can get a court to agree you're mentally unfit, they could petition for conservatorship, essentially legal control of your finances and medical decisions." My blood ran cold. "He can do that?" "He can try. That's why we're documenting everything. Keep your wits about. You, Mr. Anderson, stay sharp, stay social, keep your routine, and if he shows up with a doctor or anyone claiming to evaluate you, do not let them in your house without your attorney present." I spent the next 3 days in a state of hypervigilance, jumping at every car that drove past my house, every unexpected knock at the door. But Timothy didn't come. Instead, 3 weeks later, I received a certified letter that changed everything. Timothy Parker and Rebecca Anderson Parker were petitioning King County Superior Court for an emergency psychiatric evaluation and temporary conservatorship of Charles Anderson, citing erratic financial behavior, indicating possible cognitive decline and vulnerability to self-exploitation. I called Catherine immediately. "They filed?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "They did. It's complete garbage, Mr. Anderson. But we need to be prepared for war." Catherine scheduled me for a comprehensive neuropsychological evaluation with Dr. Marcus. Webb, the best in the state. 4 hours of cognitive testing, memory assessments, and psychological evaluation. At the end, Dr. Webb smiled and shook my hand. "Mr. Anderson, you're sharper than most 40-year-olds I evaluate. I'll have the formal report ready in 3 days, but I can tell you now, there's absolutely no indication of cognitive impairment. Your daughter and son-in-law's petition is completely without merit." Meanwhile, Catherine filed our counter-motion with devastating efficiency. Since Timothy had made this a matter of public record, we could now subpoena their financial records. 3 years of bank statements, credit card bills, tax returns, loan applications, everything. The documents that came back painted a clear picture. Timothy's actual income, their spending patterns, the systematic way they'd timed their emergencies with my most generous moods. Most damning of all, emails between Timothy and Rebecca discussing my gullibility and strategizing about when to approach me for money. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined. February 15th arrived cold and gray, Seattle rain drumming against the windows of King County Superior Court. I sat with Catherine while Timothy and Rebecca sat across the aisle with their attorney, a slick man who'd clearly underestimated what he was walking into. Judge Andrea Martinez was a no-nonsense woman in her early 60s with steel gray hair and sharp eyes. Timothy took the stand first, all false concern and rehearsed talking points. He painted me as a confused widower making irrational financial decisions, suggesting I was vulnerable to self-exploitation and needed protection from my own poor judgment. Then Catherine stood up for cross-examination. "Mr. Parker, what is your annual income?" "Around $285,000. "And your wife doesn't work outside the home?" "She's a stay-at-home mother." "So on nearly $300,000 a year, You needed Mr. Anderson's help with routine expenses? According to these financial records, you spend approximately $2,500 monthly on restaurants and entertainment alone. Does that sound like a family in financial distress? Timothy's composure cracked. Seattle area is expensive. We have obligations. Catherine pulled out a document. Your mortgage is $3,200 monthly. Your car payments total $1,100. According to your own tax returns, you spent $8,000 last year on vacation travel alone. Where exactly was the financial emergency that required Mr. Anderson's assistance? Our finances are our private business. Not when you're claiming your father-in-law is mentally incompetent while simultaneously extracting nearly $200,000 from him. Catherine's voice was ice cold. Mr. Parker, did you tell Mr. Anderson not to sit with you on the plane to Aspen? The plane tickets he paid for? Timothy's face flushed red. There was limited space in business class. You told him, and I quote from his testimony, it would be awkward. Is that accurate? Yes, I said that, but no further questions. Rebecca's testimony was worse. She crumbled under Catherine's methodical questioning about the loans that were actually gifts, the emergencies that were lifestyle upgrades, the promises of repayment that were never honored. Then Catherine presented our evidence. Dr. Webb's neuropsych evaluation showing perfect cognitive function, my physician's testimony about my excellent health, the financial forensics showing the systematic extraction of funds, email records proving Timothy and Rebecca had planned their approach. When it was over, Judge Martinez didn't even leave the bench to deliberate. I've heard enough, she said. The petition for conservatorship is denied. Mr. Anderson is clearly of sound mind and has every right to manage his own finances. Furthermore, I'm deeply troubled by what appears to be a systematic pattern of financial exploitation by the petitioners. She looked directly at Timothy and Rebecca. You should be ashamed of yourselves. Outside the courthouse, Rebecca tried to approach me one last time. Dad, please don't, I said quietly. Just don't. We can fix this. We can work it out. You tried to have me declared incompetent so Timothy could control my money. There's no fixing that, Rebecca. I walked away with Catherine and didn't look back. The fallout was swift and comprehensive. The Seattle Times picked up the story from the public court records. The headline read, Local investment manager attempts conservatorship of father-in-law after receiving $187,000 in undocumented loans. Timothy's employer terminated him within a week. Apparently, attempting to defraud a family member while working in financial services raises serious ethical concerns. Their house went on the market 2 months later. Rebecca took a job at a dental office, her first employment in 15 years. My life, meanwhile, opened up like a flower after a long winter. I joined a book club at the Ballard Library where people knew me as Charles, not as someone's father or financial resource. I started taking watercolor classes on Thursday mornings. My paintings were terrible, but I enjoyed every brushstroke. In October, I did something I dreamed about since Linda's death. I booked a solo trip to Italy, 3 weeks exploring Rome, Florence, and the Tuscan countryside. I sent postcards to myself and ate gelato for breakfast because I could. The most important change came in November. Amanda appeared on my doorstep after school, taller than I remembered, carrying her backpack and wearing Linda's determined expression. Grandpa, can I come in? I took the bus. I told Mom I was going to the library. Amanda, sweetie, does your mother know you're here? I'm 13 now, almost 14, old enough to make my own choices about who I see. We spent 3 hours together. I showed her photos of her grandmother, told her stories about building bridges across Puget Sound, shared my travel pictures. From Italy, she told me about school, her love of writing, her frustrations with her parents' financial stress. When I drove her home to their modest rental in Burien, Rebecca answered the door. Her face went pale when she saw me. She came to me, I said, before she could speak. I'm bringing her back safely. But, Rebecca, Amanda is old enough to choose. If she wants a relationship with me, I won't deny her that. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. I know. Thank you for bringing her home. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was acknowledgement, a small door opening. As I drove back to Ballard, I reflected on everything I'd learned. That love without boundaries becomes exploitation. That family who treat you like a resource aren't really family at all. That saying no isn't selfish. It's self-preservation. I also learned it's never too late to reclaim your dignity, even at 58. My house feels different now. Lighter. The engineering drawings on my office walls remind me of what I built, with my own hands and mind. The retirement fund Linda and I worked 35 years to accumulate belongs to me again, protected in a trust that can't be manipulated or exploited. I have friends who see me for who I am. I have hobbies that bring me joy. I have a granddaughter who chooses to spend time with me because she wants to, not because her parents need something. And most importantly, I have my self-respect back. Timothy and Rebecca lost everything they'd built on my generosity, and I finally found myself. The trade seems more than fair, so I ask you, what would you have done? Would you have kept giving to keep the peace, or would you have drawn the line where I did? If this story resonates with you, share it. Someone out there needs to hear they deserve better. You're worth fighting for. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Sometimes the greatest act of love for your family is teaching them that your generosity has limits, because respect that isn't earned through character will never be genuine, no matter how much money you give. At 58, I learned that protecting what you've built isn't selfishness. It's honoring every day you worked, every sacrifice you made, and every dream you and your spouse shared for a secure future.